All right, why don't we go ahead and get things started here. Welcome everybody, good afternoon. I feel like I need to do some jumping jacks or something. All right, my name is Chuck Reynolds. I'm from the Rotary Club of Guatemala. I'm the District Governor-elect for District 6220. And I welcome you all to this afternoon's panel presentation. This session is titled District Collaborations Making a Difference in Guatemala. We are joined by representatives from each of Wisconsin's Rotary districts to learn how they're collaborating on freshwater initiatives in Guatemala that improve lives for generations. And we will hear from plenary speaker Julio Grazioso, who will also provide his in-country perspectives on ensuring project success. Note that this session will end at 3:05 sharp. If you have any questions, we ask that you reserve them until the panel basically asks for questions. A quick reminder that we all want to silence our phones if you haven't done so already. And note that we're starting and ending on time. And with that, there's a whole bunch of bios I'm supposed to read, but I talked with Mary McCormick, who's going to be our facilitator. She's going to quickly introduce herself and the panel, so I won't take up another 5 minutes. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Chuck. And one of the people who traveled with us this year to Guatemala was Henry from Wapaka Club, right? So anyway, I am Mary McCormick. I am the longtime executive director of the Rotary Club of Milwaukee and a member for more than 20 years. And I always say that the Rotary has brought me many wonderful experiences, and among my favorite are the opportunities I've had to work on the projects in Guatemala. So I'm really pleased today to be able to introduce 4 of our terrific Rotarians who've been very involved in the work in Guatemala to tell you about it. So I think first I'll start with Julio because, he's really the guest from outside the district, and we'd like to start there. And as Chuck just said, he will be our plenary speaker tomorrow, so you'll just get a taste of what he has to say today. But he has been a dedicated Rotarian of the Rotary Club of Guatemala Vista Hermosa since 2006. He was club president, he was district governor of the district down there, which includes Honduras and Belize. And he has played an important role in advancing education and disaster relief efforts in his district. His commitment to Rotary's mission is further demonstrated by his participation in more than 40 global grants and his tenure on the Rotary Foundation's Washington Schools Initiative. A civil engineer by profession, he is also the co-founder of Engineers Without Borders in Guatemala, working to create sustainable infrastructure. So you'll get to hear what Julio has to share. To my right is Paige Radke, who's a member of the Rotary Club of Milwaukee and an investment strategist for HTLF Bank. She joined Rotaract back in probably 2019, came to Guatemala twice with us, was my roommate, and has been a member of the Rotary Club of Milwaukee since 2023. Next to Julio is Gary. Gary is a member of the Rotary Club of Mount Horeb. When he came to Guatemala a couple of years ago, he was in the Madison Club, so he brings a couple of different perspectives. He is a construction professional and commercial general contractor. He's quite passionate about international work, and he serves on the district's International Services Committee with a focus on really helping to get more clubs involved in international work. And finally, Jim is on the end down there. And Jim is the incoming president of the newly merged Rotary Club of Marquette Harbor and serves as the District 6220 International Services Chair. He has been associated with Rotary in one capacity or another for over 15 years and retired from being an administrator at Northern Michigan University in 2023. The only continent he has yet to visit for work, play, or service is Antarctica, and that's on his bucket list. So I think you'll find that everybody has something important to say. And I guess to set the stage here, we have 2 goals in talking to you today. First is really to talk about the power of collaboration And the second is really to show how all clubs and how all Rotarians can play a role in international projects. This isn't just for clubs that have a certain number of people or a certain size foundation or a certain ability to raise money. People who have a passion and an interest in working with international projects can do so. So today we're going to share examples of how clubs have collaborated over the years with other Rotarians, other clubs, other districts, other NGOs, and community partners on the ground in the countries in which we work. Our most important NGO partner for these projects has been Engineers Without Borders. And we're not going to talk much about them today because, in fact, they have their own breakout session tomorrow. So there's only so much you can talk about in 40 minutes. But I hope that you'll have a chance to hear them tomorrow morning. Before we go any further, though, I wanted to just take a step back and think about what it means to be a Rotarian. And we saw this already this morning, but this really is our vision statement, and I think it helps ground us in the work that we do. That together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. And, we talk about, the words like unite, we talk about taking action, lasting change. Those really define the work of Rotarians. But I also like to look at the brand profile of a Rotarian because I think it really ties into the work that we're doing as well. And that says that Rotary members are effective problem solvers who create solutions that last because we invest in relationships. I mean, so much of the work of Rotary really does involve relationships and relationship building. We know how to mobilize our networks, and we are constantly learning from our experience, continuing to learn how to continuously improve as we participate in our clubs, volunteer for projects, and manage our careers. So I think that when we look at that and just think about it for a moment, we'll really see that collaboration is in the DNA of all Rotarians. And so we're going to take a little bit of time now to see what that looks like in action. When we were getting ready for this presentation, we pulled together some information that's on this grid, and actually I did print out copies of it. I don't really expect you to see what's up there. But this represents projects that the clubs in these 3 districts have been involved with in Guatemala in partnership with Engineers Without Borders. I believe there may be some other global grants that were done that have different NGO partners, but all of these are with EWB. And in the early years, you can see there's like 1 project per year, and it really involved 6220 and Julio's district. And then over time, more districts got involved. In 2022, I believe Jim's district 6220 started to participate, and then in 2020, and then last year we had 3 years ago we had 6250. So, and as you can see that in some of these projects, the most recent one, we've had 10 districts participate, and these are districts from Kansas, South Carolina, California, North Dakota. I mean, they've really begun to see the power of what's happening here and have been willing to put their resources to the table. We've also had up to 22 Rotary clubs participate. And these are clubs that participate at the $200 level or the $20,000 level. They really are, there are many ways, and all participation is welcome. But the more that districts that we brought to the table, the more money we brought to the table. And so we've gone to larger projects, and we now can do up to 2 projects per year. So that instead of doing, a $50,000 project, we are really doing, $400,000 of work each year. In total, Rotary resources have accumulated to $1.7 million over this last decade. In addition, these projects have been supported by the funds raised by Engineers Without Borders and the contributions from the communities in which we work. And so that's another $500,000. So these projects really represent $2.2 million of investment in the community. So I know that we said we should hold all of the questions, but there's a part of me that wants to stop and think, does anybody have a question? Tim?
That works out to be $12,000 per Zoom call, right?
No, there you go, that's right. We're gonna hear about those, so that's really, thank you for that question. But Julio, all of these clubs involve Vista Hermosa. And so I think that it would really be a nice way to start if you would tell us a little bit about your club.
Thank you, Mary. So nice to see so many good friends here. My club is Guatemala Vista Hermosa, the capital city of Guatemala, and we are a mid-size club for Guatemala standards. We are 32 members in my club, but I think that includes everything. We have a satellite club, we have 2 Rotary clubs, 1 Interact, and even 1 Future club. So that makes all the family for Rotary together. My club was chartered 27 years ago, and since the very beginning, it was a very active project, a very active club in both in service projects and in building partnerships. One of the goals of my club is that every member is active in either a project or a program, and that includes mentoring some of our youth programs. But we also, this is not a written rule, but we also expect that each one of the members gives their best. They are not asked to give what they cannot, but we all feel very comfortable knowing that each of us gives the best, so we all receive equally. And about managing 10 global grants at any given time, it is not as hard as it sounds when you have the right project, good partners, a reliable collaborative organization, and a community. In 2010, the Rotary Foundation launched the Future Vision Plan, and my district was selected as one of the pilot districts to participate in. So my club was very active participating in trainings and then going to project fairs to look for projects and to present our projects and to look for partners. In 2014, we did our first global grant with 6270, and since then, as Mary said, we have been doing projects, one every year at the beginning, but lately 2 global grants the same year, and preparing 2 new global grants to the next year. And that is possible because our meetings every Wednesday. So we meet weekly, and in those meetings we review the projects we are doing now, but also the projects we are planning for the next year. So talking about the right project, the community, the collaborative organization, and partnering clubs and districts, I think the most important for us is international partners, international Rotary partners. So that's what we privilege. If that is not good or that doesn't become in a real friendship, I think we cannot move forward. So this is our most important part of that equation. And so I was trying to think in how many clubs we partner with and how many districts. And I think that we have partnered with more than 250 Rotary clubs and more than probably 40 districts. So what we think is that if we have the opportunity to have 10 global grants open at any given time, why not taking that opportunity? And that opportunity brings us to relationships, and those relationships to friendships. And frankly, at the end, I don't think it doesn't matter how many global runs are we doing. It matters if we are doing our best.
I know that Julio makes it sound like it's not that hard to manage 10 global grants at any given time, but our club hasn't done more than 2, and I think at any given time, and I think that I think about multiplying that times 5, and I think that that would really be quite something. And I would say that, you know, Julio talks about the number of districts and clubs that he has worked with, and I would guess that they all think that they're his best friend. He really does have the ability to make every partner that he works with feel very important and very valued. Jim, you know, you've been to Guatemala, I think 3 times now, with Rotary, and have participated in probably half a dozen different grants and have led 2 of them. And you're very active in the Wednesday meetings that we have most weeks. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and, you know, how that all helps structure what we're doing?
Sure. You know, a couple of preliminary notes about collaboration. First, the success of international service projects absolutely requires cooperation writ large or on a very small scale. But you just can't do it on your own. And those collaborations require 2 things at the very least. The first, it requires frequent communication between your partners so that you're not working at opposite ends, that you're being able to help one another. And secondly, it requires that you have to have a sense that you really are going to be going through a system of learning through iteration. You make decisions, you act upon them, and you adjust. And that's especially important when you're trying to work on multiple projects that span over years. So how do we handle this? I was very fortunate that some of my earliest work on global grants for District 6220, I was introduced to our companions down in Milwaukee, and because they already had perfected some of the system. And I'll tell you, as somebody who is just coming into the role of an international service chair and learning the nuances of it, and especially the boots on the ground, the waders in the water, sort of work that you have to do, I had a steep learning curve. And I am so blessed to have been introduced into this group. And so the way this works, so that we can meet those goals of frequent communication and iterative learning, is that I think we're at 200 meetings every Wednesday. We get up, at this time, we have people who are in on these Zoom meetings across at least 3 time zones at any given time. And so you kind of try and pick the right time to do that. Usually it's in the early morning for some folks. As somebody who's retired, kind of cuts in on my duty sleep, and that shows. Who do we have involved in these calls? Well, we have a wide array of characters, and they are characters. We have Jerry Stepaniak, who's kind of like our guru. He really helps run these meetings, and he's with the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. There are some other members who are in on that as well. My counterpart down in 6270, John Hine, is there. I am there from 6220, from the northern frozen country of Marquette County, Michigan. We have Engineers Without Borders, and it really isn't a monolithic group. We have students from both the Marquette University and Marquette School of Engineering, both of which have affiliated chapters or clubs tied to Engineers Without Borders. They do a lot of our design work. We have individuals on the ground in Engineers Sans Frontières, Engineers Without Borders, Guatemala, who are kind of our project managers. They're doing work on primarily wash projects, bringing water to Mayan villages. And they help with translation. We have our funders will come in. And these are districts from a wide array of areas. Sometimes clubs will come in. There will be people who are interested. One of the things that we'll talk about tomorrow, I think in the closing plenary, is that there is a way for clubs, large and small, to participate in global grants. And sometimes that is just being part of that iterative learning process. And to realize that many hands make light work, and therefore if you get people together and you communicate frequently, you can get things done, and often at a large scale. So what do we cover when we're looking at these Zoom meetings? At any given time, there are at least half a dozen, if not more, projects that we have in one stage or another. Sometimes they're just in the future. And that's where we have our people with Engineers Without Borders in Guatemala, have villages coming to them asking about projects. They do the early vetting on those. We're just in the stage right now of looking at those for next year. So they're there, and we're able to talk about the merits of those cases and some of the problems that might crop up. So right even before you get to the point of drafting a global grant to do a project of the kind of scale we're talking about here, we're working together to try and workshop and problem solve. And then there's actually the task of drafting the global grant application to RI. And that will be with a international sponsor, usually it's from the United States. As I mentioned, my club has done a couple of these. Milwaukee's done a number. We've got folks in Elmbrook that are working on one now. And you get to build that up. And it's really important to try and work through RI on this, because for each dollar that we can dedicate at the district level to a global grant, through the district designated funds that come back to us from the mothership in Evanston, we get an 80% match. And that really increases your buying power, especially when you bring together multiple districts. And so we start building this up, and we start reaching out for funders. They are districts, they are clubs, they are private entities that we've become aware of. And everybody, some people, it's $500. Sometimes we've had individuals donate $30,000 to a project. Water is so important.
That's a great foundation for us. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I'm going to move to Paige now for a couple of minutes here. Paige, you've been to Guatemala twice, and I know that you'll describe it as a life-changing experience. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it and what was really important to you?
Yes, thanks for that kind of preamble there. I mean, and really life-changing is a good way to put it. I'll be honest with you, prior to traveling down to Guatemala, I wasn't especially interested in the international work, very much focused in my community, and the opportunity came up, and it's something that I would recommend to everyone to go down there and really see what it's like to have the boots on the ground. But ultimately, it created a passion, and a big part of that came from all the collaboration that we saw. Because ultimately, it's the most important aspect in order to make sure that we're getting the job done. So I'm not going to list off all the different orgs and the people that we've already covered that we work across with the collaboration, but ultimately it's, again, those relationships that become a really important part of it. So very, very special thing for me is I was actually able to go on the trip 2 years in a row. So I went for the first time in 2019, and then I went again in 2020. And yes, we did just barely make it back before the pandemic.
Days before the world shut down.
Yeah, but I mean, so like the fun thing was, there were some people that had been on the trip before that were coming again. There were people that were brand new. We had Rotarians from different clubs within the district as well. So I really got to see from a lot of different perspectives. and the, just the impact of the work that we were doing, but then also build relationships of my own and get to see more of that process in that really hands-on way. So for example, in 2019, we were down at the Chipo site and got to have a huge celebration. You can see a picture up there of the kids, and there was singing, and it was really just like an immersive, amazing cultural experience. And then coming back in 2020, where we had hit some road bumps. There were some obstacles in the way. Working with all of the different parties can be challenging, but that doesn't change the fact that we have to keep collaborating. We are held accountable, and working again with the community, because ultimately it's about connecting with them and bringing needs and resources that they wouldn't have otherwise. But coming and discussing those roadblocks and how are we going to overcome them, and then of course following along to see it come to completion in the following years. Another great example, again, I was there in 2020. I actually got to sit, I kind of just tagged along, if you will, but there was a conversation about the hospital water sanitation project. And I said, hey, would it be okay if I, just came and kind of heard how this went? And so it was, Julio was there, another Rotarian from a different club, and just to kind of hear the thought process and the questions and how we had to bring all these different parties together. And then of course to follow that and see it to come to completion and actually send a Rotaractor down there in the following year. But there's also the, again, important personal connections that you make. In 2019, I met some Rotaractors at Julio's house. There's a little bit of a language barrier. Some will tell you I can speak Spanish. I will tell you I can't, but again, it's up for debate. And then, the next year we're at, I think it was your district conference. And, I'm walking back in the bathrooms looking for my table, and one of the girls, Mocha, that I had met the year before goes, Paige, and so I come running over and, I join her and her group and really just establishing those connections. Because again, it's something that we want it to be sustainable. And so that goes through the next generations as well. And so the more that we can establish those connections in the early days, the more we're going to be able to do. But ultimately, we have to work together to make sure that these ideas are sustainable. And if you haven't been able to tell already, I'm not an expert in this. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a global grant writer. But I bring that connection and that passion and that energy to the table. And when we each kind of figure out what our strengths are and how we can help and move the needle forward, that's really when the magic happens within the global grant work.
Thank you, Paige. And I think, Paige really exemplifies, one of the things that we really talk about when we encourage people to come on the trips. Our club does organize, it's been 2 trips per year lately. And we say that the reason we do these trips, and we don't go down there to necessarily paint walls or move stones, or there are a lot of people in Rotary that there's lots of labor. They really don't need us to actually do physical work. Although sometimes we do it alongside people to build relationships, but it's really to inspire the passion and the reason, to really develop that understanding about why we're doing the work, and to prove to the communities that we care enough to show up, that we want to be there, that we want that international connection. We realize that we really are more alike than different, and that, as was said in the plenary, we have many blessings being as the result of where we were born. And so let's see what we can do to make this world a better place. Gary, you came down a couple of years ago. I think you were on that trip right before the pandemic as well. Is that right, or was it right after?
Right after.
But you, at that time, were a member of the Rotary Club of Madison and recently moved to Mount Toro. And I think you've really been thinking about how to move this work forward and bring more clubs in as well. So tell us about your thoughts on this.
Thanks, Marie. Just a little bit of background. I'm a general contractor, engineer by training, civil like Julio. But my friends know me as the how guy. How are you going to do that? And so I'm always asking, okay, that's a great idea. How are you going to do that? So Jared and Pat reached out to me.
while I was at the Madison Club and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about global grants, and I was on the global grant committee at that time. And these guys sat down and shared with me their experience of how they were moving grants through the process, making a difference someplace. And prior to this, I'd never been out of the country. So I'm all about how are you guys doing that? I mean, because I'm a contractor. I know what it takes to build. We're professional problem solvers. Things change moment by moment. So we got to think on our feet. How do you do that? It's 800-900 miles away in a different country. So I'm all in. And so they're sharing with me this thing that they're doing. And so I started asking questions, and they're like, well, why don't you come to Guatemala? So I don't know, I've never been on it before. What's that going to do? So I would go to Guatemala, and it was life-changing. We are so privileged. To see people living in homes with dirt floors, tin roofs, and no running water, and we have the ability to do this, to meet with the hospital folks in Escuintla and talk to them about their experience when they didn't have water and how Rotary came to the table and put a new well down and a new water tower up for less than $100,000. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How do I get involved with this? I want to be a part of this because I want to use my skills somehow, but I can't do it in country. We need partners. We need collaboration. And we've got expertise with the Milwaukee Club and how they've been able to streamline this process. And I told Jerry, we're going to do a global grant with the Madison Club. I'm going to be connected to your hip. I'm going to be, I want to learn the process. We're going to do this. And so that started a lot of questions for me. I ended up seeking out some advice from our district and getting on the International Services Committee, which is a committee that's formed to help smaller clubs get involved. It's not hard, folks. There's a lot of detail. We got people that can do that. It's all about passion. And when we got to the trip in Guatemala, the community and their love and their compassion for us was overwhelming. I can't express that enough. I experienced a similar thing with a project I've done in Chile with a club down there. And getting them in person and beginning to forge some friendships and relationships. Ed Fuda, who's going to speak later on, was on the international committee, my committee at Madison, and he spoke one day to the committee members and said, you know, Rotary's interest in doing international projects and global grants isn't about getting something done. It's about making a relationship, a professional relationship, and making the world smaller. And out of that relationship comes a friendship. And then out of the friendships, the world becomes much tinier. And again, it's not hard to do this. We had a guide and our interpreter, Kata, from Guatemala. Amazing story, amazing background. We found out she's engaged. Somehow we're going to try to make it for either a Zoom meeting or something, because you want to. You find these people are so gracious that you just want to be a part of what they're doing. International Global Grants gives us the opportunity to do this. Not all districts deal with money the same way. Our district matches the club money. And going forward this year, they're matching the club money 2-to-1. So $1,000 of club money becomes $4,800 to the project, because there's an 80% match of the district money by Rotary Foundation. So and I have a project I'm standing up, so if anybody's interested, I'm looking for 5 or 6 other clubs that want to
But
get involved.
actually, you know, I think that we really did want to hear about what you're doing to bring new clubs into the.
Well, what I'm doing
Yeah.
is through the International Services Committee and connecting with the members there and connecting with the clubs, and then taking projects like this, as a model to replicate what Jerry and Pat and the Milwaukee Club are doing, and taking it on the road to reach out to clubs to say, hey, would you like to come alongside, not just write a check, but to experience the process, with the idea that you've got an opportunity to visit with a team when they go to Guatemala. The Milwaukee Club is doing a trip or two each year, and it's wonderful. I can't thank you enough for the experience.
Well, I think that it's what being in Rotary is all about, right? So, and we are really talking about the many, many wonderful people that make this happen. But I just have to say that one of the humble people who really want to be called out, but is our North Star, and so much of this work is sitting over there, Mike Paddock. So thank you, Mike. And I learned that Mike has done only in Guatemala 125 projects. And that's just probably the tip of the iceberg for his work internationally. So I want to go back to Julio for a minute here, because, you know, Julio, we've been talking a lot about global grants and the ways that Rotarians and clubs can participate. But your club also manages a number of smaller grants. You want to tell us a little bit about that and how you see those going forward?
Yes, global grants are an important part of our portfolio of projects. But I think balance is very important, so we do also district grants, club-to-club grants, projects, and only club projects. So that way we can give opportunity to our club members to participate in those projects. And we can, they can work according to their expectation and according to their capacities. We carry out every year a project of building a school, expanding schools, or building bathrooms also for schools. We have two scholarship programs, one for middle school student, another for high school. And right now we have a wonderful collaboration with District 6270 in small projects. One of those was the breastfeeding room for the hospital of Escuintla, where Gary said about the water well. So then we saw that need. Or the kitchen and playground of one of the schools of the communities where we did the water project, or the project we are working currently, a kitchen in a school in the highlands of those communities we have worked. And these projects came up because of a very simple thing, visits. The visits of Rotarians sharing with communities and sharing those expectations and needs. And these are very good projects, simple to execute, not big funding, ranges from 2,000 to 20,000. And Pete Bush, district governor, has been insisting in looking for these opportunities and opening opportunities for clubs to participate. Just Stepania, who you mentioned before, once told me, Julio, it seems like you always have a project ready to show us. And that is kind of true, because we prefer in our club to have projects ready instead of saying, okay, we'll look for a project. And so we don't lose the momentum, and like now that Gary is talking about that, so if there is this opportunity, we put people together and things happen. And right now we have the request of 2 pedestrian bridges and a vehicular bridge. And those are very good projects for this kind of club to club, because we also have the collaboration of the chapters of the students of universities in Wisconsin, Marquette and MSOE. So they do the design, they go there to work hands-on, and few clubs put together, put the money, we have the support of Mike and other Rotarians, and those projects happens. And in less time that we expect, they are done. So we love to do projects, and we're open to opportunities.
Oh, thank you. And I think that it's important for all of us to realize that, Julio, I think, told us that his club has 32 members. right? So I mean, and we just look at what those 32 people have been able to accomplish year after year after year. So as Rotarians, we have great potential and great opportunity at all time. And Paige and I are with a large club, but I would also say we often refer to our World Community Service Committee as a club within a club, because there are probably about 25 people that are active in the World Community Service Committee, maybe 10 that are really active. We keep talking about Jerry, who's on a cruise right now, wasn't able to join us today. But it doesn't take a club of 200 or 300 people to really get this work done. It really takes people that just care deeply and are willing to use the tools and the paths that are out there if you seek them. So we have about, we have 10 more minutes, and so we could each ask each of you just to say a few closing remarks and then take a few questions from the audience.
I'll go first. So yeah, I'll just say that, I just like scratched the tip of the iceberg with, some of the stories and the connections and the different relationships that I've made, not even talking about the work with the students with MSOP and Marquette and the way that you can collaborate in those really small ways. As a Rotary Club, we really wanted to do a fundraiser. And so we connected with the Marquette Club and we said, hey, we don't know how much we can raise, but we'd really like to do something. And they, so we ended up, I think, raising around $2,000. So again, for us, that was big. And it went towards the students' expenses on the trip so that they didn't have to fund as much out of pocket, right? So there's different ways that you can connect, different ways that you can collaborate and, just kind of find your niche. And, again, there's always something you can do, even if you're not a civil engineer, even if you're not a construction expert. You'll find me in a leach pit shoveling gravel with the locals because I wanted something hands-on. And so there's always that opportunity, and when you find those little niches, again, you can make a big difference even with just what you have.
I don't think Paige is in that photo, but there's an MSOE student as
Yeah, we just got it, just to get concrete from one side of the site to the other takes collaboration.
That's right.
So.
Just a quick comment, a couple things. Lean in, say yes. You can't steer a parked car.
Maybe I'll be a little more succinct than that. No matter what endeavor you do, when you're doing it with others, it's always going to be the committee that shows up, that does the heavy lifting. And in these processes, we have great collaborations of people who show up. Join us.
I want to talk about the importance of those groups coming to Guatemala during these visits. It is very encouraging for communities and for us as local Rotarians. Some Rotarians asked me once, I think it is not as important for you or for the people, it is more important for us. But I see how big the motivation we have, and especially the communities, because of these visits. And these opportunities for me are good. It is a good time to put together all what we do. And for my presentation tomorrow, I think it has been the hardest ever, because it is that much, and putting that in 10, 15 minutes, it was really terrible. But then I was thinking that it is good to have all that information and to see how much we have done and our achievements and talk about that. But it is more important to talk about the future, because Rotary is the future. And that is important to learn, to evaluate. But I think now we can talk about our future projects, how we will be partnering, how we'll be building this friendship, that it comes spontaneously. But projects are the best excuse for many, many good things.
And if you go to Guatemala, you get to go to Julio's beautiful home and have homemade pizza in his wood-fired oven. And so he He is the host with the most. So, thank you all for being here. We have about 5 or 6 more minutes, and so I'd love to take some questions. Do you mind standing up?
Sure. I'm from the Ripon Club. We spent 20 years building water projects in rural Panama. And recently heard about the Guatemala water project, and I have to be honest, I think a lot of my fellow Rotarians sort of went, another water project. But Julio, you were talking about small-scale projects, all kinds of different things. How do we tap into that? How do we plug into the things that you have available?
I think this is a good moment for that. We can talk after that, but there are guys like Mary, Jim, Gary, Harry, that they are very involved. So every Wednesday we have a meeting, a Zoom call, that you can join to one of those, or 12 or 15 people in each of the meetings, and start enrolling in that movement that I would call, and then looking for opportunities. An advice that I sometimes give to Rotarians, if they allow me, is that Rotary times are very special. Sometimes we're looking for a project and then we have to wait because that project is not a good fit for Rotary, or Rotary is not a good fit for that project. But then things come together and we're able to work and to start a long-term relationship. So you are welcome to come to those Wednesday meetings.
All right, thank you.
Chuck?
Question for Julio. I mean, in a scale, if you were to say, what of all the work that needs to be done in Guatemala, how far along are you in terms of the water projects you'd like to get done?
How far in terms of the list?
Are you gonna finish them in your
How
lifetime?
much opportunity yet to do more wells?
Oh, countless. Yes, it is. And it is very nice to see that most of the requests come from the communities, because they know to the neighboring, they see in the neighboring community that they have a very good working water project, and they ask, how did you get it? And they say, oh, Rotary, and also Engineers Without Borders. So they contact us by, I don't know how, but they do that, and then we start, and those are the best, because if the request comes from different source, it can be tricky. But there are plenty of opportunities for all sizes of projects.
And I think, just before I take your question, I think that one of the really important things that I've learned in working in this process is that the people on the ground are able to tell which communities are really ready for a project. That, I think all of us, or many of us, have had the opportunity to go to a developing country and think, oh my gosh, we need to build this school. And then, you could raise money and build a school, and 5 years later, there's no kids in the school. And so I think one of the great opportunities that we have in working with Julio and Engineers Without Borders is really having the people that help determine, is this going to be a sustainable project? Is the community really ready to take this on in the long term? And I think that's an important attribute.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the lead. And it was just my fortune that when 6220 joined, it was my governor's year. And this makes us really grateful. My question to you is this: if you have to pick 3 outcomes, we talked about the 3 major outcomes that has come out of this project in terms of changing lives, school attendance, health, whatever.
And I think that's very important, because Rotary is about outcomes more than about outputs. So we go there and deliver the water or the school, but the outcome I really appreciate the most is how the pride or how proud the communities are after those projects, and that they know that they can achieve many different things. And the attitude of these communities is completely different. And it is very, very good to see that probably we work in the water project, but then after a while, they did an improvement in the streets, the village is much cleaner, and they did an improvement in different fields. But what they needed was that starting point, and that's where we work.
And perfect place to end. Thank you